Hey guys, and welcome to another video where we're going to be taking a look at some of the changes made to the PSP craft server, including basically a finished external server model and the overall ability to change and customize your game. So before we get started here, this video took a lot of time to make and produce, and I'd really appreciate it if you could hit that subscribe button and hit the notification bell right under it to be notified of whenever What we have running is we have PSP Link, which is a program which allows me to connect my USB to the PSP and run programs on it. I also made it so that it mirrors my console output from the PSP. This is pretty much a standard PSP debugging application, and it's very useful for setting up stuff like this. It's also useful for testing your programs, and it even lets you know when it crashes, basically where you crashed. So right now, we're running on the socket, and right now it's the PSP server with the default value definitely not PSP. If we go up here, this is a config JSON file. This is called properties.json, and basically what it has is the message of the day is definitely not a PSP. Now what would happen if, for example, I went over here and reset this? It's going to reset the PSP as well. Okay, it's going to reset that. Alright, so I just changed it to the message of the day is a real PSP. Down here I'm going to LT start the application, and then I'm going to basically run it this way, and now we should be able to load up that value, say is a real PSP, and once we come over here and basically refresh it, we should be good. It will say is a real PSP, 0 out of 4. Another thing that we can go ahead and do is change max players number, which is going to be like, let's say 50. Taking that max players to 50, resetting, and then loading it up again. That's going to basically yield our application. It's going to start it again. We should be able to join this again, and it will change the number of players. So right now it's 0 out of 4. Once it gets ping, it's going to go back to a 0 of 50. So now we have the total player count and everything, and this is basically the customizability. You can also change some of the other settings up here, like the server port, the game mode that you're running in, alongside hardcore, if it's true or not, and then difficulty. Of course, I'll be adding a lot more onto this, but for now, this is pretty much what I really wanted to add. So without further ado, let's go ahead and talk more about the architecture. Alright, so getting into the Minecraft architecture. So basically what we have is the internal client and the internal server, both of which are connected by an event bus and are surrounded by their respective external clients and external servers. This overall event bus is wrapped by a network handler, which is basically going to be sending packets over the network. So what we're going to take a look at right now is basically how do we get the events over the network from the internal client to the internal server. This also explains how the external client and external server work as well. So, for example, let's take a very simple example from PC Minecraft. For example, if I press W on my keyboard, that's the command to go forward. A key listener, which is basically just something listening to see what your input is going to go off, which is going to trigger an update to position. When the position is updated, that actually becomes an event that goes on the event bus. This event then gets posted, and then the relevant event listener on the other side, on the server side, is going to handle this event, and basically what the server side is responsible for is checking if that's a valid place that they can be, and then setting the position on the server side so that we can have a successful transaction of information here. This is the basic way that pretty much every single event, keystroke, and a lot more things are triggered in Minecraft. However, on a network, we have to add a few more steps to this. So we take our basic input, as usual, update the position and trigger an event. By triggering an event, we create an event detail structure of some sort and then throw it into the network interface. The network interface interprets this in some way and then makes a packet. Once it's made a packet, it's going to basically send that packet over the network, and then it's going to be received by the server. The server is then going to take the packet make a packet handler. The packet handler is going to go ahead and find out all the information that was packed into it, which is going to become an event and is going to trigger another event on the server side. This is going to then go ahead, check and update the position, and then you get the same successful result. This is the overall process of how this client-server system works. The next thing that we're going to look at is how does Craft Server do it, and what is Craft Server currently capable of. So looking at Craft Server, we have a network pipe, which is generally just called a socket. That's basically what you see when you start it up. It says binding a socket and listening on the socket. So then you get a connection, and then it gets received. Then this received packet has its basic information just thrown into a queue of packets. Once the handle packet method is called every 50 milliseconds or so, it then goes ahead and sends out all of these different packets to their respective packet handlers. It does this pretty much iteratively and somewhat asynchronously. These packet handlers then create their own event data, basically by just reading the packet, then throws it onto the event bus. The event bus is managed by the internal server. So overall, this entire process here is done by the external server, and the event bus is on the internal server. So what we have currently working is that we have the socket working, we have the receiving and the queue of packets alongside handle packets. The receiving, the queue of packets, and the handling of packets, it's all done by Stardust Engine for you. Packet handlers are registered by the server, which is then going to do event creation and throw it onto the event bus. The event bus is also provided by Stardust Engine. So currently, basically the only thing that we have left to do is event creation. So that's pretty much what I'm going to be doing for the next bit here. So as always, we have to look at what's next. For example, what I want to do is create events in the external server, which is basically filling out event information structures and then throwing it on the event bus. The next thing is going to be parallel and concurrent execution, which basically means that the external server, the network functions, aren't going to be dependent on internal server updates, or it could be vice versa. The internal server will always update every 50 milliseconds or every in-game tick. Whereas the overall external server is pretty much going to be just handling whenever it can. This also means that we need to do some other things, like adding multiple connections, which would basically allow us to have a certain number of unique players. This would be very helpful, and it would basically allow multiplayer, the true multiplayer experience, to be possible. In other news, what I wanted to say is that the external server should be complete by Friday, based on the model I've already shown you above. So after this, where should we start going? Well, as I see it, we really have two paths. There's one path, which is the Minecraft PSP external client, and the Minecraft PSP internal client, which eventually leads into something. But the other side is the Craft Server internal server. On a terms of week basis, it should take the MC-PSP external client 1 or 2 weeks to set up, 1 or 2 months to finish the MC-PSP internal client, and then an unknown number, probably 3 or 4 months for the internal server. Both of these lead to the same output though, because the internal server and the internal client will be integrated, which would result in version 1.0. So currently my choice is to do the Craft Server internal server, because it's really the beef and potatoes of the entire sort of application. It results in the biggest effect, and it pretty much proves that Minecraft runs on the PSP. It's the most important thing that I really need to get right, and will overall determine the success of the project. Currently, we already have a fully functioning client for Minecraft Java, and while you may say that, oh, you also have Minecraft Java server, the thing about that is that server requires a lot less input. Based on the Minecraft protocol specification, there are 33 inputs to the server, whereas there are 80 outputs. On the flip side, if I were to do the client, I would need to take in 80 inputs and produce 33 outputs, which is a little bit disconcerting. However, there's one big but. MC-PSP will still be receiving external client features, bug fixes, architectural adjustments, integration preparation, and probably a few more engine changes with Stardust Engine in order to be a lot more successful and a better client overall. These changes will be made in the Project Raven repository and will eventually form the Raven client, whereas the Raven client and the Craft server will work together. So thank you guys for watching, especially if you made it this far in the video. I really appreciate it. Please like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you guys later.